This airline really lowered its standards. Anyone can get on now. A businessman sneered, glancing at seat 15A, where a black woman in a worn denim jacket sat quietly, her toddler sleeping against her chest. The cabin whispered dismissively, writing her off as another welfare case. But when the captain nervously announced an emergency signal, and two F-16s suddenly flanked the aircraft, she opened her eyes and whispered, "They found me." Minutes later, a voice crackled over the radio, "Shadow Eagle 7. Welcome home." And Air Force One appeared, banking in respectful salute. Her name was Maya, but nobody on that plane knew what that meant. She was 26 with natural hair pulled back in a simple bun, no jewelry except small gold hoops that had been her grandmother's. Her denim jacket was soft from years of wear, covering a simple white t-shirt. Her black jeans were clean but faded, and her canvas sneakers showed their age. A dapper bag sat at her feet, stuffed with bottles and snacks, while her 3-year-old son Cass slept peacefully in her arms. The flight from Atlanta to Washington D.C. was packed with people who thought they owned the world. Business executives in expensive suits, a few politicians heading back to the Capitol, flight attendants moving with practiced smiles. Maya didn't fit their picture. Not in their narrow vision. They saw her in economy, holding a sleeping child, and assumed she was another single mother flying on government assistance. The cabin hummed with their whispered judgments, their sideways glances cutting like she was a stain on their pristine environment. She'd been dozing lightly, one arm secure around Ka, when the businessman's voice sliced through. His name was Robert, around 50, wearing a suit that screamed corporate success and a Rolex he adjusted constantly. He leaned toward his colleague, a slick investment banker named Curtis, not bothering to lower his voice. Maya's hand tightened slightly on Ka's back, the only sign she'd heard. Curtis smirked, straightening his tie, and muttered, "Probably flew here on taxpayer money." A few seats over, a young influencer with platinum blonde hair and perfectly contoured makeup was streaming to her followers. Her name was Tiffany, early 20s, the type who lived for viral moments. "YL, look at 15A, she whispered to her phone. Like, does she even know this isn't a Greyhound bus? Total Section 8 vibes. Her comments exploded with crying laughing emojis, and the cabin rippled with snickers. Maya didn't stir. Her eyes remained closed, her breathing steady as if she existed somewhere beyond their cruelty. A woman in an ivory pantsuit, mid-30s, sat several rows ahead, her posture rigid with self-importance. Her name was Suzanne, a political strategist who carried herself like she'd never lost a debate. She turned to her assistant, a nervous young man in glasses, and said loudly enough to carry, "I suppose this is what happens when airlines try to be politically correct." Her voice dripped condescension, and several passengers nodded approvingly. Susan adjusted her pearl necklace, her manicured nails catching the cabin light, and added, "It's almost insulting to paying customers like us." Maya's thumb brushed gently across Ka's sleeping form, but she didn't look up. The cabin's judgment settled around her like a suffocating fog, each passenger convinced of their superiority. Across the aisle, an elderly couple in designer clothing whispered conspiratorially. The woman, Beverly, sported a tennis bracelet that caught every ray of light. Her husband Gerald kept checking his phone, probably monitoring his portfolio. "She really shouldn't be in first class," Beverly said, loud enough for nearby passengers to catch. Hiral nodded without looking up. "Probably some kind of charity upgrade," he added, their laughter sharp and cutting. A flight attendant named Brandon, tall with perfectly styled hair and a name tag positioned just so, approached Maya's row. He set down a plastic cup of water with unnecessary force, his expression making his feelings clear. She was an inconvenience, a problem passenger taking up space meant for better people. Maya's free hand shifted slightly, but she kept her eyes closed, Cass still peaceful in her arms. The cabin continued its cruel symphony, judgment layering upon judgment like sediment. If this story resonates with you, pause for a moment. Share this truth, hit that like button, and subscribe. These stories matter because they remind us that strength often wears the most unexpected faces. Let's continue this journey together. The aircraft cruised smoothly at 35,000 feet, the sky outside an endless canvas of blue. Then the captain's voice cut through, tight with tension. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've received an unidentified signal. Please remain calm while we assess the situation." The cabin went silent for a heartbeat before erupting in chaos. Passengers twisted toward windows, phones emerging to capture clouds as if they held answers. A man in a polo shirt several rows back shouted, "Are we being hijacked?" His voice cracked, spreading panic like wildfire. Robert gripped his armrest, already planning his lawsuit against the airline. Tiffany zoomed in on the chaos, whispering breathlessly to her stream, "This is insane, guys. Something's happening up here." Beverly clutched Gerald's arm, her bracelet digging into her skin. "We should have taken the private jet," she hissed. Maya opened her eyes. They were deep brown, steady as bedrock, like she'd weathered storms these people couldn't imagine. She leaned forward slightly, her voice barely audible as she whispered, "Not hijackers. They're coming for me." Her words were soft, nearly lost in the chaos, but Robert caught them. He spun toward her, his face flushed with indignation. "What did you just say? Who do you think you are?" His voice boomed, drawing every eye in the cabin. Tiffany's camera swung toward Maya, her giggle sharp as glass. "Oh my God, she's having a breakdown." An older woman in cashmere, sitting 2 rows ahead, turned around. Her name was Constance, the kind of lady who moved through the world expecting deference. "Don't cause trouble, dear," she said, her voice saccharine but venomous. "Just hold your baby and stay quiet." Some college guys in the back, wearing matching fraternity hoodies, started filming too. "Crazy lady thinks she's important," one called out, and they erupted in laughter. Brandon strode over, his jaw set. "Ma'am, you need to remain quiet or we'll have security waiting when we land." His tone was final, like she was already a solved problem. The cabin roared with cruel laughter, feeding off the moment, turning Maya into their entertainment. A man in a tailored blazer, probably a tech executive named Jason, leaned over from behind. He wore a smug grin earned from years of closing deals. "You know, if you're going to play make-believe, at least dress for the part," he said, gesturing at her jacket and sneakers like they were evidence of her worthlessness. Several passengers snickered, nodding along as Jason leaned back, satisfied with his performance. Maya's fingers curled protectively around Ka, who stirred slightly but remained asleep, but her expression stayed serene, her gaze fixed on the window. The laughter grew, rolling through the cabin like a wave of cruelty, each person convinced they'd identified the joke among them. Hasson's grin widened, and he whispered something to the woman beside him, who laughed even louder, her voice grating against Maya's silence. She didn't flinch, didn't react. Her hand rested on her diaper bag, fingers still, but her eyes locked with Brandon's for a split second. "Call security," she said, her voice soft but clear as a blade through silk. 2 words, and the laughter stumbled. Brandon blinked, caught off guard, then turned away muttering about protocol. The cabin settled, but something had shifted. People kept glancing at her, some annoyed, some curious, like they were waiting for her to crack. She didn't. She adjusted Kai gently and closed her eyes again, the diaper bag still at her feet. Then came the sound, a low, thunderous roar different from the plane's engines. Heads whipped the windows as 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons, sleek and deadly, sliced through the sky, their wings close enough to see every detail. Screams filled the cabin. Fighter jets. Tiffany's phone shook as she zoomed in, her live stream exploding with frantic comments. The college guys pressed their faces to glass, one shouting, "This is like Top Gun." Beverly's bracelet clinked as she grabbed Gerald's hand, her voice trembling. "What's happening?" "What's happening?" Robert was already typing furiously on his phone, composing angry emails to executives. Brandon froze in the aisle, his radio crackling with static but no clear answers. Maya opened her eyes slowly this time, looking out at the jets with something that might have been recognition. The aircraft moved like extensions of her will, their formation precise and familiar as a remembered dance. A few rows back, an elderly veteran in a faded service jacket leaned forward. His name was Samuel, hands weathered by age but as sharp as ever. He adjusted his glasses, studying the jets intently. "That's impossible," he whispered, voice low but carrying. "That's presidential escort formation." His words reached several passengers, confusion rippling through their panic. Tiffany's camera found him, but Samuel's attention was locked on Maya like he was seeing something impossible made real. She didn't acknowledge his stare, just traced the edge of her diaper bag with slow, deliberate movements, as if counting seconds until the world understood. A teenage girl with headphones around her neck turned to her mother. Her name was Amber, restless energy radiating from her like heat. "Mom, why is everyone acting like it's her fault?" she asked, pointing at Maya. Her voice cut through the chaos, impatient and dismissive. "She's just some random person with a baby. This is so stupid." Her mother Linda, tired looking with worry lines etched deep, tried to hush her daughter while adding, "She's probably just scared, honey. Let it go." The words were meant kindly but landed like dismissal, reducing Maya to just another confused passenger. Amber rolled her eyes, snapping a photo for her group chat with the caption, "Weird lady in 15A thinks planes are about her." Maya's grip on Kat tightened slightly before relaxing, her face remaining calm as her gaze stayed fixed on the window where the F-16s maintained their escort. Robert stood again, his face purple with outrage, pointing directly at Maya. "Don't tell me you actually think those fighters are here for you." His voice boomed, pulling every eye back to her. Curtis joined in with a nasty smirk. 15A thinks she's in an action movie. The college guys howled, one making airplane sounds while swooping his hands through the air. Brandon stepped forward again, blocking Maya's view of the aisle. "Sit down and be quiet immediately," his voice sharper now, almost desperate. Maya didn't move. She reached into her dapper bag, her movement slow and careful, pulling out a small silver dog tag. It was worn smooth, no bigger than a quarter, but it caught the cabin light. Engraved on it were the words Shadow Eagle 7. The cabin couldn't see it yet, but Samuel did, his hands gripping his armrests until his knuckles went white, breath catching in his throat. A man in a golf shirt, probably a car salesman named Derek, leaned forward with sarcasm dripping from his voice. "Oh please, what's next? You gonna tell us you're Wonder Woman?" It chuckled, looking around for approval, and several passengers joined in, their laughter nervous but cutting. Derek adjusted his fake Rolex and leaned back smugly. "Some people will say anything for attention," he added loud enough for half the cabin to hear. Maya's fingers brushed the dog tag in her palm, her movements measured like she was weighing the gravity of his words. She didn't look at him, didn't respond, just kept her eyes on the window where the F-16s flew steady and true, their presence more powerful than his mockery. She stood slowly, ignoring Brandon's protests, stirring but not waking in her arms. Avery followed her as she walked to the emergency communication panel near the galley. Tiffany's live stream was going insane, comments flooding in faster than she could read. "What's happening? This has to be fake." Maya didn't look at anyone. She pressed the radio button, her voice steady and sure. "This is Shadow Eagle 7 requesting acknowledgement." The cabin went dead silent, as if all the air had been sucked into space. Outside, the F-16s rolled slightly, their wings dipping in unmistakable salute. Phones clattered to the floor. Tiffany's stream froze, her mouth hanging open. Samuel's voice cracked the silence. "Dear God. Shadow Eagle 7 was reported killed in action 5 years ago." Maya didn't turn around. She pressed her free hand over her heart, fingers tight around the dog tag, her eyes never leaving the sky where her past had found her present. Then came the deeper roar, unmistakable and awesome. Air Force One broke through the cloud layer, its distinctive blue and white livery gleaming in the sunlight, the presidential seal bold against the fuselage. The radio crackled with crystal clarity, "Shadow Eagle 7, welcome home. The nation remembers." Gasps echoed through the cabin, some passengers sobbing openly. Tiffany's phone lay forgotten on the floor, her live stream abandoned. The college guys sat in stunned silence for the first time in their lives. Robert's face had gone ashen, his phone still displaying his half-written complaint email. Samuel was crying now, quiet tears streaming down his weathered cheeks as decades of military service connected him to this moment. Maya raised her free hand in a slow, precise salute to the sky, her dark eyes blazing with something fierce and unbreakable, Kai still sleeping peacefully against her shoulder. The years rolled back in her memory. She'd been someone else once, a young woman in a crisp Air Force uniform, standing on a Nevada tarmac with her flat helmet tucked under her arm. She'd been Shadow Eagle 7, one of the finest pilots the military had ever trained. During a classified mission protecting a diplomatic convoy, she'd taken devastating fire to save lives, her aircraft barely making it home. The official report listed her as Kia when her plane was found empty, and she'd let the world believe it. She walked away from the medals, the ceremonies, the laugh. Found herself in small towns, working quiet jobs, raising Kai alone after his father left when things got too real. She'd sit in all-night diners, nursing coffee while Ka slept in his carrier, watching jets streak across distant skies. Sometimes her hand would tighten around her dog tag, hidden beneath civilian clothes, but nobody ever noticed. Nobody ever asked. She was just another single black mother, invisible to a world that had already decided her worth. The applause started hesitant, then grew into something thunderous. Passengers stood, clapping, some weeping, others just staring at her like they were seeing her for the first time, really seeing her. Tiffany remained frozen, her phone still dark on the floor. Robert sank into his seat, his expensive watch suddenly feeling heavy as shame. Samuel continued crying, his hands folded in his lap like he was witnessing something sacred. Brandon stepped back, his face burning with embarrassment, his radio silent in his hand. Maya didn't acknowledge the ovation. She returned to seat 15A, settling Ka more comfortably in her arms, her dapper bag back at her feet, eyes returning to the window. The commercial aircraft continued its journey, now escorted by the most powerful aircraft in the world, while inside, everything had changed. A woman in a bright red blazer, maybe a marketing executive named Patricia, had stood up earlier, her lips curled in disgust. Some people just don't belong in civilized society, she'd said, making sure everyone heard her disdain. It's embarrassing for the rest of us. Now Patricia sat in mortified silence, her designer handbag suddenly feeling like evidence of her own emptiness. The applause swelled again, louder this time, as if the passengers were applauding not just Maya's identity, but their own awakening to the blindness of their assumptions. When the plane landed at Reagan National, the tarmac was chaos. News vans lined the runway, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions through the noise. Maya stepped off carrying Ka, her denim jacket still frayed, her canvas sneakers still scuffed. She didn't pause for cameras, didn't answer questions, just walked with even, sure steps, her dapper bag slung over her shoulder. Being here, consequences began falling like dominoes. Robert received a call that drained the color from his face. Fired, he said, loud enough for other passengers to hear. His company's largest government contract was connected to Maya's military record, and his behavior had been captured on multiple phones. One viral video later, and he was done. Tiffany's livestream had indeed gone viral, but not how she'd planned. Clips of her mocking a decorated veteran spread across social media, and her followers turned on her with brutal efficiency. By Sunrise, her sponsorships were cancelled, her comments flooded with outrage, her influencer career effectively over. Suzanne tried damage control, posting lengthy apologies across her social media accounts, but the political world moves fast and forgives slowly. Her consulting firm quietly removed her from their website, citing values alignment issues. The college guys deleted their videos, but their fraternity's national office had already seen the clips, resulting in immediate suspension and mandatory sensitivity training. Brandon was reassigned to ground operations, his name whispered in airline break rooms as the guy who threatened a war hero. Patricia's marketing firm issued a statement distancing themselves from her comments, and her corporate clients began quietly seeking new representation. None of it was dramatic or loud, just consequences settling like dust after a storm. Maya didn't witness any of it. She was already gone, walking through the terminal with Ka babbling happily in her arms, her steps as steady as they'd always been. When her brother Marcus arrived, the remaining crowd parted instinctively. He didn't need to announce himself or raise his voice, the way he moved through space said everything. Tall and lean in a simple black suit, no flashy accessories, but carrying himself with quiet authority that made people step aside. Robert looked away, his hands trembling. Tiffany fumbled with her phone, face flushed with shame. Suzanne tried to approach, stammering some kind of apology, but Marcus simply nodded acknowledgement and continued walking. He reached Maya, and she looked up, her expression softening for the first time all day. He didn't make a scene or create drama, just stood beside her, his hand briefly touching Kai's head in greeting. A security supervisor, a professional woman named Captain Torres, approached with obvious respect. "Ma'am," she said, her voice careful and deferential. "We have a vehicle waiting for you. Direct orders from Washington." She gestured toward a black SUV with tinted windows, its driver standing at crisp attention. The remaining crowd watched as Maya nodded, shifting Kai to one arm while Marcus took the dapper bag. They followed Captain Torres through the terminal, the crowd parting further, phones still recording but voices quieter now, as if they were witnessing something sacred and rare. Captain Torres held the vehicle door open, her hand steady despite the magnitude of the moment, and Maya climbed inside without ceremony, Marcus settling beside her as Kai gurgled contentedly. The door closed softly, and the SUV pulled away, carrying them into a world that finally understood who she really was. She hadn't needed rescue, had never needed it. She'd walked through their words, their laughter, their assumptions, and emerged unchanged because their opinions had never defined her worth. Her truth had been enough, quiet and unshakable, carried in her heart and in a worn dog tag that spoke louder than all their noise combined. The headlines would scream about the mystery passenger in 15A, about Air Force One salute, about a hero forgotten and found. Maya wouldn't read them. She was already somewhere else, Kai on her hip, Marcus at her side, walking into a world that finally saw her not as a single black mother to be dismissed, but as the decorated pilot she'd always been. For everyone who's been overlooked, judged by appearance or circumstance, reduced to stereotypes and assumptions, this story stands as your reminder, you are not invisible. Your worth isn't measured by their narrow vision. You carry it quiet and strong, just like she did. You are never alone.